Jordan here. Welcome to today's video. I want to talk about how we can look at things that we are pursuing, like a business, building a business, growing a business, like something like sales or something like a career profession or something that you're doing online, and how we can start to look at this as a creative pursuit and a creative expression, something far more than simply just a strategy or a execution plan or a business plan or whatever the case is. And this has been a interesting journey for me over the last number of weeks and months, and I will have a different video going deeper onto what that looks like, because there's a lot of things I want to touch on that's going to be very, very relevant to the journey of self-mastery, at least for me and my experience. And in this video, I want to look at how we can combine these two things that are usually made very separate, right? Because if we look at business, it's like this very traditional capitalistic thing where you're growing, you're looking for profit, you're looking to make money, and it seems very separate to things like being an artist or creating. But we live in such a beautiful time right now, and this rise of the creator economy in this digital era is allowing the combination of those two to come closer and closer. And I think that that's a very, very profound and amazing thing, because it opens up so much room for expression in a very authentic way, which is really what the online space and the world really, really needs, at least from my observation. So I want to talk a little bit about that in this video and share a little bit about my experience of understanding what this really means, and a little bit about my story as to how I kind of came to this realization recently, and how I'm going to be looking at things moving forward in the hopes that it serves you as well. So the first thing I want to speak about is really just an observation that I've seen within the content creation online space when it comes to, coaching, consulting and all those things, but also just general content out there that is available to be consumed. And obviously with the rise of AI, there's an acceleration that can happen within the creative process that is really profound. Like, I use AI a lot in my business, not to replace me, but to refine things and to accelerate things and to challenge my thinking and to move through the creative process or the building process with greater pace and velocity. That's really what I use it for. I never use it to replace me, because that's not something that I want to do. I'm not going to sit here and read you a ChatGPT script because I don't believe in that, because that takes away the human aspect of it. And then you'll feel when I am just speaking off lines or scripts that are trying to, persuade you to do something or whatever the case is, right? And I see that a lot from different content out there. And for me, at least, when I watch those types of videos, it just doesn't resonate. Like, it doesn't resonate. I can tell when someone is speaking to me in a formula or speaking to me in a way that is like, I'm trying to persuade you type thing. And it just feels ingenuine. And I think that this is something that's going to happen. And again, it's people who are using AI in a different way. And obviously, we can use it whatever way we want to use it. But there's something being removed from the process of creation that is the core element of what it means to be human and what it means to be a creative person. Because we're all creative, right? Whether you're someone who's in a career, someone running a business, someone who's in sales, whatever the case is, you're creative in your own way. And whether you think so or not, you absolutely are. We are creative beings, because we have source energy within us, which allows us to create. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So when I observed this type of content, it kind of gave me this feeling that there was something lacking within the industry that I'm in, at least, which is primarily coaching and consulting and, helping people online in the areas of self-mastery, their mind, their emotions, specifically men who are in business or sales or on the pursuit of something greater in life. And when I see that, it makes me feel like there's something missing, which is the creative aspect, and which is why I'm making this video in the first place. So I wanted to just highlight that, because maybe you've observed some of these things as well, and maybe it's not resonating with you either, because it definitely is just not resonating for me. Something feels off. We want the truth. We want authenticity. We want that to shine through with zero ego, right? That's really at least what I'm looking for, and what I hope to provide to the people like you who are watching this video. So when I talk about source energy, I mean God. I mean whatever your representation of God is. Some people refer to it as Jesus, refer to it as God, refer to it as higher self, whatever the case is. At least my belief system, right? And it's just my belief system. It doesn't need to be yours. Is that I believe that they're all coming across and saying the same thing. It's the same message. It's not about the religion. It's not about the belief system. It's about what is the core message, which is, for me, unconditional love and unity. And how do we connect to this creativity that we're talking about? Well, we cultivate our intuitive senses. At least from my experience, that has worked really well for me. And that allows us to channel source energy through us when we start to dissolve the ego. So, for example, dissolving the ego is going to be a big, big part of this, because this has been such a dominant part of my journey specifically as well, especially with everything we're talking about here. Because if I'm sitting in front of you and I'm trying to persuade you, and you're looking at me as someone who is superior, you're looking at me who is someone who has all the answers or all these different things figured out, that is a false truth, because I don't have everything figured out. And I'm a human being just as much as you. And yes, I may have developed some skills in certain areas, and that is helping people in some way, and I can build a business around that, and I can create videos and things like that. But that doesn't mean that I am better than you. That does not mean that I am different than you, because you have your own gifts and talents as well that allows you to create in such a beautiful way in whatever way you decide to do that. So when we're looking at dissolving the ego, it feels like it's about sitting down and authentically expressing source energy through the video, through the content. And that's what allows that authenticity to really come through without the ego. And of course, I don't think we can really fully dissolve the ego, because we need the ego to survive, right? It helps us survive, right? If there's a bear in front of you, or if there's a bus coming, your ego stops you from jumping out in front of that or going to fight the bear, right? Because it keeps you in that safe zone. It's survival. But we don't live in a place with a lot of danger, right? Well, at least in most places, we don't live in a place where we're, constantly being threatened all the time. So therefore, dissolving the ego is a big part of the spiritual path, but also the journey of self-mastery as well, so that we can truly align with what our soul wants, right? Instead of thinking that we have to be a certain way or try to be better than other people or achieve things just to showcase it to other people and highlight how great we are. I don't believe that that's really a true path to fulfillment and love within yourself. And then to be able to serve from a place of authenticity and love, it really requires the dissolving of the ego, which is been a massive part of my journey as well, which is why I'm speaking about it, because I will only ever speak about things that I've had experience in or things that I'm currently working through myself as well. So when I talk about source shining through, it's the dissolving of the ego. It's getting out of the mind. It's getting out of the judgment. It's letting go of the superiority. It's letting go of feeling the need to be better than, and instead just being you. And that's a journey, don't get me wrong, and I'm on it just as much as anybody else. So when I talk about source energy shining through, that's a process. It's also feels like a skill that is also being developed as well within this journey. And I think that that's a really incredible thing, but it ties directly into the process of combining, let's say, business with creativity, and having those two marry each other in this creator economy that we live in, which is really amazing, creates so many opportunities. So when we look at what that really means for content creation, for example, it looks at how can we be more real, how can we be more raw, and how can we be more relatable. And those three tie into each other, because if you're real and raw, you're going to be relatable. If you're aiming to be relatable to someone, you're going to be real and raw, right? They all tie into each other. And that's something that came to me a couple of days ago as I was watching Kanye West's documentary on Netflix. It's an absolutely incredible documentary, amazing footage, really inspiring story. And it has really, really helped me connect to my own inner artist. Because what a lot of people don't know, at least on my journey, I've tried many different businesses, and right now I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm helping men who are in sales or in entrepreneurship or in some career development, or they're accelerating towards a better life for themselves and becoming that highest version of themselves, because they've realized that it's not all in the tactics and strategies. It's not all in the productivity and the habits. It's more about what is the internal transformation, so that I can deeply align with what is meant for me and my soul and that journey, right? It's very highly spiritual. And with that, it took me a very long time to come to that realization that this was something I felt like I was meant to do. But the things that I tried in the beginning were very creative based. So one of the first businesses that I tried to start was a marketing agency, or a kind of a marketing consulting business for music artists, because I had spent a year studying in a university in a college in Utrecht, which is just south of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I was doing music marketing, and I was building up this network of different artists and different producers and people who were hosting, collaborations. And there was really, really cool people around me. And I started to go and walk this path. But at the time, unfortunately, I was living at my parents' house, and I just moved back, and I, you know, decided to not walk the path of the traditional 9 to 5. So I started to go and do my own thing. The first thing for me was related to music. So I was doing marketing and content creation and helping artists with that specifically, so that they could grow and reach more people and get more, obviously, views in their songs and things like that. But for me, the big challenge was, didn't a lot of artists I was trying to work with, and the ones I was working with, didn't have the funds to really, pump that into their own promotion, right? Which is why a lot of artists these days are self promoted, and you can actually just, build a lot of your base from just putting yourself out there by yourself. You don't necessarily need somebody the way you did before. But alongside that, I was creating beats, and I was learning to become a music producer. So that was a big part of what I was doing at that time. But for me, I started to get sucked into the marketing agency side of things. Like, I started to get sucked into the business side, where I kind of let go of a lot of the creative projects when it came to music and things like that, after trying and failing for quite a long time with it, because I was still new to business. I was still new to marketing. I was still new to these different things. I was just trying to apply it to an area that I was really excited about, because working with artists and being in the industry was really exciting to me. But at the time, I was living back home with my parents, hadn't made any money in a long time, and I was really struggling. And all I wanted to do was move abroad so I could, create some freedom for myself, create some financial security for myself, and, hit some of these goals that I had set up for myself. So I put a plug in it for the time being and started to go off in the marketing agency route. Spent 2.5 years building that, got it to 6 figures, was traveling the world, doing all really cool things that way, and then transitioned into what I do now over the last 2 years or so. So that's been a really fun journey. But now, coming back full circle, I'm starting to look at, how can I start to include some of those things into my business, so that I can at least look at things from a different perspective. Because what I've noticed about people who are in the music industry, or people who are really connected deeply to their creative side, which would be people that come to mind are Rick Rubin, who works with many artists, or Kanye West, like the documentary I talked about. These people bring source energy into their creation, and the whole creative process is based around self-awareness and consciousness and understanding energy, and understanding, hey, that looks good, or that feels good, or that is something that I'm excited about. Let's lean into that. Let's try that. Let's be a scientist with this. Let's test that. Like, that is the creative process, at least from my experience. It's a lot about testing. So that's very similar to the way business operates, right? Especially when you're doing things online, because you're testing videos, you're testing content, you're testing writing, you're testing emails, you're testing different products, different processes, and it's all very creative. But for me, a lot of the time, it was like there were two separate things. But when we started to bring them together, and I started to think about that and how that could look, that got me really, really excited. And I feel like everything is coming full circle for me, at least when I was starting off, and learning to make beats and making these different sounds, and like experimenting with things inside of FL Studio, which was the software that I was using. And these things were really inspiring. So when I started to think about this idea of, instead of looking at business from like, hey, how can I just make more revenue, or how can I just generate more profit? Yes, those things are still part of the goal, and those things are still part of a healthy, functional business. Don't get me wrong. But how can I look at the whole process from a perspective of an artist, right? And remove the scripting and the kind of strategies and stuff like that that are just, don't align or don't feel exciting. And how can I instead look at things from the perspective of an artist and a creative, and someone who is, yes, showing up to serve with integrity and looking to support people with the products that I do offer and the coaching and support that I offer, but looking at it through the lens of a creative artist. And that, to me, feels really, really, really exciting. And that leads me into that next point, which is the excitement. I do believe that we are being guided. And if you've watched some of my other videos, maybe you've heard me talk about this from different times, but when we lean into what is exciting for us, it's guiding us in the direction of finding that alignment and finding that spark that's going to fuel us to the next level. Because you can be driven by two things, right, in life. You can be driven by fear and doubt and insecurity and inferiority and feeling like you're not enough, because if you don't do this and you don't do this and you don't hit these goals and you don't do this, then you're not worthy. That can be a fuel source. And that's, I from what I've observed from a lot of people who create content, and this was me back in the day for a while as well, where you're driven by those things, right? You get driven by the self doubt. And I think that there's merit in that because you learn some skills and it's part of the journey. And again, it's all perfectly unfolding the way it's meant to unfold. So it's not right or wrong, it's just is what it is. But there's also another fuel source that is available. And over the last 2 years, especially with this new direction I've taken my business and the work that I do, which I absolutely love doing, I've found a different fuel source. But switching that fuel source has taken some time, but it's been leaning into excitement. What are the things that are exciting about my life? What are the things that I'm excited about doing? What are the things I'm excited about building? What are the things I'm excited about creating? What are the things I'm excited about doing with other people and collaborating with? Like, where am I excited about living, right? All of these different questions, I don't think we ask ourselves enough, because if I can find something that I'm excited about, then isn't that a thing that's pulling me in that direction? So if I'm excited about growing my business because of what it means for me, or how I can express myself in a creative way, and that feels exciting, right? Because only you can answer that question. Like, what's exciting for me might not be exciting for you, and that's okay. But you got to find what that thing is for you, that excitement, and lean into that. At least that's what I found, And when I lean into that, the more I do, the more I get sparks and bursts of motivation, energy, inspiration that are far beyond what I've ever experienced before. And this is why this like creative business and combining those two and looking at it through the lens of being an artist is a really exciting thing, at least for me. So maybe it's exciting for you too. Who knows? Something to test out, maybe. Again, just being a scientist, being an artist. And when you combine the three things, which is service, creation, and source, right? I would love to have another word for creation that begins with S, so there would be three S's, but anyway, we'll just use creation for now. So service, which would be your business or the thing that you're doing to be able to create income for yourself, because service is directly correlated to the cash that you make. So when you're providing service, you make money. So that's just the basic. So service, and then creation, which is kind of like this artistry that we're talking about. How can we look at it through the lens of an artist and look at it like an art project? And then source that we're talking about here, which is the dissolving of the ego and allowing that energy to flow through you in your creations, in your business, in how you speak, in how you live your life, so that it becomes less about you, and it becomes less about, for me example, it becomes less about Jordan Lee, and it becomes more about the service to others through channeling that source energy into helping people in whatever way I help them, which is the deeper emotional transformation that I work with people on. So with those types of things, when we combine those three things, it's a recipe for a really exciting, aligned life that is serving people to a really high level. And I think that's really exciting. Maybe you too. But I think these things, when we experiment with finding our own way and looking at what's out there and seeing like, well, I don't really resonate with that. I don't really resonate with that either. How can I come back to my truth? How can I come back to what's aligned for me and figure out my own way within that whole process, so that I can find a way that is unique, right? Because one of the most amazing things that I learned from the Kanye West documentary, and of course, people have mixed opinions about this guy. I think he is a creative genius. I think he allows source to flow through him in a very profound way, and I think his message is overly positive. He's just portrayed very negatively in the media, but I just don't trust the media, because the media has an agenda. So with these different things, regardless of whether you like him or not, he is someone who deeply believes in himself, but he has always came from the perspective of seeing himself as someone who is here with a message and is here to channel source energy through his creations. Because let's look at this, right? When he came into the industry of rap, it was mainly people who were rapping about hookers and drugs and a lifestyle. It was very ego driven, very like, hey, look at me, I'm better than you, this person's this person's that, I'm this, look at me, that kind of thing. And rap is still like that in some ways. Nothing wrong with that. People are just expressing whatever they're feeling. It is what it is. But he came in, saw that was the industry, right? And if you watch the documentary, you'll be able to understand this deeper. But he came into that industry and was like, hey, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to show up from this place of I'm going to talk about God. I'm going to talk about my experience of like, hey, I got a message to share. I got something to create here, and I need to share it, and I want to get this out into the world, and I want to do it in a way that is creative and unique to me, and it has a powerful message. And a lot of his music has very, very powerful things said in it, right? I haven't listened to every single one of his songs, but the songs I have listened to I've really enjoyed. And it's always come from a different perspective. Like, you'll never find someone who is similar to Kanye. He's in his own lane completely. But the reason I mention this is because he is tapped in to source energy. He's tapped into God, that frequency that allows him to dissolve like this person who he may think he is. And obviously everybody's on the journey of dissolving the ego. And some people would argue that he's very, ego driven. Well, I wouldn't say he is. I would say he's very dialed in to source energy, and which allows him to have the confidence and belief within himself, and just simply expresses that, right? And he is right in some of the things that he says when it comes down to, people will say that if you say that you're good at something or you're confident in what you do, then that's a negative thing, or you're being arrogant. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having the belief within yourself and expressing that and say, hey, yeah, I believe in me. My stuff is good. My creations are good. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with that, personally. So whether you like him or not, he allows that to flow through him, at least from what I've observed from him from many years, many years of listening to him, and also then just watching this documentary more recently. And I think that's a really cool example. But again, this is not a discussion about Kanye, but you'll see what I mean here. How can we allow that energy to flow through us, to create something powerful, to create authentically? And again, with all this, it can sound like, you just got to be more authentic. You just got to arrive at this destination where you're fully authentic and everything is amazing. We're all on that journey, and I haven't arrived like anybody else. But I do find myself getting closer and closer to that as I go on this journey of self-mastery. And I've seen it with clients as well, where like you slowly but surely start to dissolve the ego. And when you do that, and you kind of get out of what everybody else is doing, and you get out of what people are telling you to do, or what what processes or systems you're operating inside of a program, and you kind of take the things that work, but you also bring your own flair to it, and you dissolve those superiority complexes that come from the ego. You allow yourself to kind of express more freely and find your own path. Because what I've noticed in business, especially when it comes to the different entrepreneurs or coaches that I speak with on a weekly, monthly basis inside of different programs I coach in, as well as my own coaching as well, is that everything works. Every single thing works. How many business models out there are online that you can start and grow and get to 10K a month or 100K a month or whatever the number is? You can do it with anything. It's just, what is your path? Like, what is the thing that you do? Like, what is your way of generating income? What is your way of generating clients? What is your way of generating opportunities? And how can you take the stuff that works and see it like, hey, that works for this person. That's amazing. And, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that. I'm going to cherry pick this, but I'm also going to leave that. I'm also going to leave that because maybe now is not the right time to implement that. But maybe that's something that just doesn't feel exciting for you. And when we bring it back to that understanding, we can start to see that, hey, yeah, all these people who are out here having success or whatever the case is, they're having success in their own way. That doesn't mean that my way is going to look like that. My way of success is my way of being my own authentic self within the process of walking the path of self-mastery and execution on my goals, right? Both deeply correlated. And when we just settle into that, and understand that nobody's coming to save us, and understand that, whatever program or coach or person that we work with, yes, they have answers and help and support, and absolutely they create a container for transformation if they're doing it the right way. But the journey is also yours, and it's unique to you, and it's about you finding your path within the process itself and finding that way, so that at least you are empowering yourself to walk a path that is your path. And I think that's really what we're all doing on this journey. It's just that sometimes we can start to think like the group and get pulled in this other direction. And yes, don't get me wrong, there's things that you can do and execute on that other people are doing, and that is helpful and that works. Absolutely. But how can you bring your flair to it? How can you bring your authentic self to it? How can you bring your way of doing things, or your way of thinking, or what you're learning about, or what you're developing, maybe in a different area altogether, and apply that into what you're building or what you're creating or what you're pursuing? And I think that's where the magic starts to happen. And again, this is something I'm working on myself. And this is why I'm making this video, because this is a direction I'm taking things in. If you've seen me on Instagram lately, you'll see that things have changed in terms of the content I've produced. And there's going to be many different changes, because I'm just going to be a scientist with these things. I'm going to experiment with these different areas and see what happens. But the core goal for me is to dissolve the ego, allow source energy to flow through, and look at my business through the lens of an artist. So then I bring my own perspective. That feels exciting to me, so I know it's in alignment for me. And that's a pretty cool thing that I've been thinking about lately. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. I would love to hear what's coming up for you. Any thoughts, any ideas? Does this resonate? Does it make sense? Drop in the comments below if you'd like to add something to this. I would love to hear it. I read all of them, obviously. And yeah, like, let's just see where this goes, like, tap into what's true for you on your path and create something amazing, whatever that may look like. I'll see you in the next video.